Hello students. I could not find a video that I liked for the ellipse. So this is lesson 34A, the back page, starting with number 9. I'm going to do 9 through 14 with you. And then hopefully that'll be enough for you to be able to do the other lessons on your own. So let's look at number 9. We have 4x squared plus y squared is equal to 9. And hopefully you can see my paper, okay? I tried to get as close as I could. And number 9 says, if x is 0, what is y? And remember, there's two answers here. One is going to be positive and one is going to be negative, because when square roots come into play, we have positive and negative, because remember 2 times 2 is positive 4, but negative 2 times negative 2 is also positive 4, which is why the positive and the negative come into play. So I'm going to put this up here for a moment, come down here where I have some scrap paper. So it says x is 0. So 0 squared plus y squared is equal to 9. All I did was put a 0 into the original equation where x was. And we know 0 squared is 0 and 0 times 4 is 0. So this whole thing cancels out, right? And we have y squared is equal to 9. Well, I'm getting closer, but I still need to know what y is. Number 9 says what is y, not y squared. So I have to take the square root of both sides, because the square root undoes this square to where we will now have 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. So for number 9 here, we are going to have positive 3 and negative 3. Let's look at number 10. 10 says, well, if y is 0, what do we get? So we're going to have 4x squared plus 0 squared is equal to 9. We know that 0 squared is 0, so that's going to cancel out. And we are going to have 4x squared is equal to 9. So in this case, we have this 4, right? And we're like, okay, well, we still are trying to get to x. So what is with x? There are two things. There's a 4 with the x and there's a squared, right? Well, we're going to deal with the 4 first. This relationship between 4 and x squared is multiplication. So we're going to do the inverse, which is division. So we are going to divide both sides by 4. When I do that, my 4's over here cancel, right? And I'm left with x squared is equal to 9/4. And we're closer. We got rid of the 4, but now we need to get down to 1x instead of 2. So we are going to take the square root of both sides, because the square root undoes the square, which will leave us with x on the left side of our equation. And don't be frightened by squaring a fraction. This is basically just the same as the square root of 9 over the square root of 4. If it helps you to break it out like that, to think of it that way, by all means do that. And we know the square root of 9 is 3 and the square root of 4 is 2. So x is 3/2 and negative 3/2. Remember, this is plus and minus. So now, sorry, I'm trying to make sure my paper is where you can see it, is positive 3/2 and negative 3/2. You can leave it as 3/2. If you said 1.5 and negative 1.5, that is also true. Okay, your teacher's manual, the answer key says plus or minus 3/2. But when we go to graph this, which we're getting ready to do, 1.5 is easier for us to think of instead of 3/2. So now we're going to graph it. It doesn't say, hey, next graph. They say, hey, what is this? Number 11, this figure is a what? Well, we already know from looking at it before we even did number 9 or 10 that this is an ellipse, because we have this implied 1 here, right? We have coefficients of 4 and 1, and because those coefficients are not the same, it's an ellipse, okay? Because the formula is written in ellipse form. And remember, when it's a circle, such as down here, number 15, this is a circle because we have an implied 1 and an implied 1, and they're the same, right? This over here, number 16, is also a circle because we don't we don't have any coefficients. You can again say implied ones, but we know because there are no coefficients, like if there was a 4 here and a 3 here, that would make it an ellipse, but we don't have that. Okay, so just again, so we know this is an ellipse. So the last thing we're gonna do now is graph this. And so it says when x is 3/2 or 1.5. So on the x-axis, I'm gonna go over to 1/2 and I'm gonna go up 3. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to put my point. And then I also have -3, -1.5, -3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And so now, hold on a minute. Sorry. So, so with this plus and -3, let's see what our four different points are. So we have 3, we have 1.5, 3, and we have -1.5, -3, which are the 2 points that I already put on the graph. You know what? I taught you a different way in class. Sorry, sometimes I get confused between you guys and my Algebra 2 because we're also doing conic sections. Scratch that for a minute. Here's what we're going to do. On the x-axis, it's 1.5 and 1.5. So on x, from the origin, I'm going to go over to 1.5 and I'm going to put a dot. And I'm going to go to the left 1.5 and I'm going to put a dot. And then on y, y is 3 and -3. So I'm going to put a dot at 3 and -3. Okay. And now I can draw my ellipse. So ignore those points that I gave you to begin with. And so I forgot we're not there yet in this class. So that is how we draw our ellipse for this one. I want to touch on this one a little bit because there's something we do before we put 0 in for x and 0 in for y on 12 and 13. And what we have to do is we have to divide everything. Oh, no, they didn't divide everything. I can't believe they didn't. Okay, so again, the difference between Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. So we have this 6x squared plus 4y squared is equal to 12, right? And we're just doing the same thing we did before. It says, all right, if I put 0 in for x, what do I get? Okay, so we can just write it like this. This all zeroes itself out, right? Because anything times 0 is 0. And then you're left with 4y squared is equal to 12. Divide both sides by 4. And you get y squared is equal to 3. But again, we need, pull this up a little bit so you guys can see better. We need y, so we take the square root of both sides and we get radical 3. So y is plus or minus radical 3. And you're like, well, how do I graph that? Well, if you use your calculator, which right now I'm using my phone to video, you would put that into your calculator and you would get a decimal. And in this case, I am guessing by looking at the graph that it is about maybe 1.8. I don't know that for sure. You guys would have to put it into your calculator. Like I said, I'm using my phone to record, so I can't put it in. But I'm going to guesstimate from the graph on the answer key that it's around 1.8. I could be off a little bit. And now we do the same thing to find y. They want us, they say if y is 0, what will x be? So we're just going to have 6x squared equals 12, right? Like we can skip this step because we already know if we put 0 in for y, that, 0 squared is 0 times 4 is 0. And so then now we're going to divide both sides by 6 and we will get x squared is equal to 2. And now we have to take the square root of both sides, and we will get x is equal to plus or minus radical 2. And again, we have to put that into our calculator. And I'm going to guess it's about 1.2. Could be 1.3. Again, these are estimates because I'm looking at the graph and guessing instead of actually putting it into the calculator. So, but now that I have those, okay, so we had over here, we can put in radical 3, negative radical 3, and then we can put in radical 2 and negative radical 2. We know our figure is an ellipse. We knew that from the very beginning because the 6 and the 4, our coefficients are not equal. And now the last thing we do is graph. And before I do that, I'm for my own, all right, I wanted to put what those approximate to so that I can now show you how we graph this. So on the x-axis, I'm gonna, we said that x is about 1.2. So on x, I'm gonna go over to positive 1.2 and negative 1.2 and put my 2 dots. And we said that y is radical 3 and negative radical 3, which equates to about 1.8. So I'm going to go up to 1.8 and down to 1.8. And from there, I can now draw my ellipse. Hopefully this helps. Have a great week.